Previously on agentpalmer.com, about Alex gets it right when tearing down fake online relationships. I'm damn glad Tim Matheson wrote his autobiography, and Jason will be back soon to fill in some of the gaps from our meandering conversation. This is the Palmer Files, episode 167, with Jamie Ryu, who was on the show to pull back the curtain on the publishing industry, well, just a little bit, plus her own journey to starting a company, bridging the gap between traditional publishing and self-publishing, and much, much more. Are you ready? Let's do the show!
We're bridging a gap kind of between self-publishing and traditional publishing. I decided I wanted to become an editor when I was very young. I decided when I was like 13. We're in a creative field, so I don't think that we should be really cutthroat about anything, because at the end of the day, it's not that serious. We're making books. Acquisitions editor positions are the most sought after, they are the most competitive, and they are also the ones with the least work-life balance.
Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 167th episode is Jamie Ryu. This episode is one I have been excited to share since we recorded it, because I had questions and have had questions regarding books and their publishing for a long time. And while this is not definitive by any measure, it was both eye-opening and educational for me, and this is why I am so excited to share it with you. The process of a book being selected and what happens for it to come to your local bookstore, we talk about it. Burnout in an industry with little work-life balance, we talk about it. Permission to give feedback, other options, a better way forward. Unlike Fight Club, we talk about it. But before we get there, remember that if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you can find all related ways to contact Jamie and myself in the show notes. You can see all of Jamie's stuff at jamieisreading.com. That's Jamie isreading.com. Or learn more about Contrarian Publishing at contrarianpublishing.com. As always, don't forget you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com. And of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it. Jamie, you are in publishing, and you have been in publishing, and as a very big reader and a blogger and a podcaster, I just want to say you are a unicorn. I'm a curious person. I think that comes from being a reader and a blogger and a podcaster, but I have reached out to small publishers, large publishers, indie. No publisher wants to talk to me. I don't know if it's because everyone's always so busy, or like we don't talk about. Is it like Fight Club? Like is publishing like nobody? I've talked to authors. I've talked to literary agents. I've talked to editors. Publishing's the one. You're the one I've been missing as far as the whole process.
I mean, honestly, it's probably a little bit of. Some of it's probably a little bit of a Fight Club thing, and some of it is like busy. There's a lot to do on the publishing side of things. It's really not just one job, and so that's probably a large part of it. And another part of it is, we're not really in the business of promoting ourselves. We're in the business of promoting our books.
That's true. I just reach out because I'm curious about the process. I helped a friend of mine self-publish a book of poetry. And I know he went, before we did that, obviously we went through the submission process, and I've heard from other people about the submission process, but I genuinely, and I say this with, I guess, as little ignorance as I could possibly have, I've no idea what publishing means anymore, other than like some people get book deals and some people don't, but like there's all these books that come out, and I know they're not all self-published, but I'm just like, I don't know what happens. Like, I guess, like, let's start from the beginning. What does a publisher do?
Yeah. So, I mean, a publisher is essentially the entity that is responsible for getting books onto the shelves. It's kind of the whole, encapsulates everything. So let me kind of go through.
Okay.
You're an author. You've written a book. I'm sure you and hopefully your listeners are familiar with as an author, if you want to get a larger publisher, you're going to need to get an agent. So you need to query the agent and
Yes.
do that for a very long time. And then if you manage to get an agent, the agent goes on submission. This is where the publishing house comes in. So once the agent is on submission, then the book gets submitted to editors. So these are acquisitions editors that work inside a publishing house. And essentially, they are the people curating what the publisher is going to release into the world for public consumption. So an editor will evaluate the merits, in terms of, does it fit the market? Is the writing good? Does this person seem like they're going to be okay to work with? And they will then bring it to the team. So you'll bring it to an acquisitions meeting. The acquisitions meeting consists of marketers. It consists of publicists. It consists of sales reps. That's a big one, sales reps.
And that's different from marketing.
Yes, very different.
Okay.
And then finance is there too, and the publisher is there. So when you say publisher, it's kind of, there is one person who is the publisher, but then there's, the publishing house as a whole.
Okay.
So ultimately speaking, the publisher gets the final say, but all of these different departments weigh in on whether or not the editor is able to acquire this title.
Okay. And then is it just because you've used the word editor?
Yeah.
Is the editor, the acquisitions editor, the editor of the book, or is that potentially a different person after acceptance?
So it would be the acquisitions editor would be the editor of the book, but not for all types of editing. It would be primarily the developmental editing stage that the acquisitions editor is involved in.
Okay.
So it would be, it depends on the house again, but especially at larger houses, line edits and copy edits is a different team of people. So it's production editors, or it's managing editors, or it's freelance copy editors coming in. So hopefully an author is going to stay with that one editor for the whole process. Obviously, publishers have turnover where, editors will leave, come and go, whatever. So in that case, the book could be reassigned to another editor. But generally speaking, your acquisitions editor would be the person shepherding you through the whole process.
That's, so far I'm understanding a lot more of why it's a publishing house.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot more sense. And then is there a reason, and we'll get into what you're doing now, but is there a reason that there's even a small percentage of we don't talk about this? And I only bring it up because, and I've said this before on the podcast, and I've said it to many, many people, books is the one that, movies have DVD extras that explain how this movie came to be. Maybe not necessarily how the script was written, but this is what we did for camera, and this is how we shot this, and all that kind of stuff. And we've seen enough of VH1 behind the music, so they kind of go, and there's deep dives into albums, and we understand how a music album is made. And even to a certain extent, I guess most podcasts, especially like mine, where you're talking, you genuinely eventually listen to 20 episodes, you'll discover kind of a little bit about my process and how it works.
Right.
Books, genuinely somebody writes a manuscript and it gets published, and what's in between there it's not as readily available as all three of the other things I've said. And to me, as a reader, I want to know. I'm curious. I want to know the behind the scenes, because I can find the behind the scenes for every other medium.
Honestly, I think that books are a little different than the other things that you've mentioned, primarily because it's an industry that has really, really, really tight margins. Overall, it is one of those places where, most, unless you're a really, really big publisher, you're not raking in money. And so it's difficult to really kind of give those extras. And I feel very interestingly that in publishing, there is a certain lack of wanting to give credit where credit is due to the team
Okay.
of people. Part of that may be the high turnover rate. Part of it may be just that's the way it's always been, something in there. But there are a lot of houses where you'll have no idea who the marketer on the book was. You have no idea who the publicist was. You have no idea who the editor was, unless the author puts it in the acknowledgments or something like that.
Okay.
It's not standard for there to be a credits section, the way that there is for a movie or a music video or something like that.
Okay.
Which is quite unfortunate in my opinion. It's one of the things that I challenge a little bit in the industry.
How is there any turnover at all then? Because so as an example, I'm a stay-at-home dad that edits podcasts for a living. But how do I have any more or less workable experience in publishing than somebody who's coming from a house where I guess you could say I did that thing, but like if no one else is giving you credit and the author didn't put you in the acknowledgments, like what do you have? Just I spent 5 years at, I don't know, insert publisher here and that's enough?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is experience based. A lot of it is the industry is so small that people talk.
Okay.
It's just kind of one of those things. I don't know that I want to comment about it either way.
No, it's fine. It's
the lines there a little bit.
Yeah,
but
it's just I mean, it makes a lot more sense now why I didn't. Everybody was nice, but no one wanted to talk to me, and I'm not trying to get you to like crap on the industry. I just genuinely I'm curious, and I think a lot of people who are readers would also kind of see that, unless you personally know an author who will walk you through their experience, but every author's experience is so unique. I have no idea. And that's the other thing, I guess, which is you've been in these publishing houses from I know some authors and every experience is unique. Is every book like do you get to rely on anything, or is it always like here's a fresh slate, you have a general idea of what's next, but everything's different this time around?
It really does depend. There are some things that definitely remain the same. A lot of the administrative side of things is always kind of the same, and a lot of the steps that you're taking within the house are the same. And so let's kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier. If a publisher signs off, they say yes to a book. Now the contracts department is negotiating with the agent to try to get everything settled with the contract. You'll actually be surprised. Most people will be surprised that in publishing, it is standard to do work before the contract is signed. There are times where the contract is not yet signed and the book is coming out in like 6 months.
What is this? I mean, and you don't have to answer. Is this a genuine like a tactic, like a negotiation tactic, or is it just we don't have time?
Sometimes things really take that long. So publishers and agents are both stretched so thin that, sometimes negotiations go for a really long time, or this or that, or, someone left, so then they have to refill the position or whatever it may be. So it's pretty standard to not have like a completely finalized contract before you begin work. Usually you work off of what's called a deal memo.
Okay.
And so that's kind of just a standard, like, this is the general terms that you're kind of settling on. The other things are still under negotiation, but these are the things that are set in stone. And from there, again, this is a situation where it's so messy. Maybe the contract gets signed in a few months, maybe it gets signed in a year. Like it's wildly different, but while you're waiting on the contract, work can't stop. So at this point,
what's the I guess from I guess just a general perspective, what's the rush? Like, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there are enough submissions and acceptances that, given the ebbs and flows of everything, it should all equal out, even if we have to wait on a contract. So what is there I mean, to be very specific, is there a we have accepted you, the admissions the acquisitions editor accepted you, and like there's a ticking clock and we have to have this book out in X amount of time? Like does the clock start from there and then obviously
there's not really a clock.
Okay.
It's one of those things where publishing takes a really long time. This is something that maybe not everyone knows, is if an editor at a big house signs a book tomorrow, that book is probably not coming out until like 2028.
Okay.
If it's like a big publisher. So you kind of want to start getting the ball rolling in advance, because as an editor, you not only have all of the books that you are working on for the next like 3 years it laying in front of you, but you also have to take care of all of your backlist titles. So every title you've ever worked on or the house has ever published, like if a house is very old, books from 100 years ago that are still selling still need someone within the house to manage the title.
Okay.
And so those books get divvied up between the editors that are in the house currently. So editors at any given time are not only dealing with their list and their curations, they are dealing with books that were published in the 1900s.
Okay. So it's not, is there I mean, I just imagine like, there are people that maybe, and I'm speaking from just, again, ignorance. I'm not in this world at all, but is there a you accept my book and I sit down and you're like, all right, this is going to come out in 3 years. And I go, all right, I'm going to indie publish. Like, do people, even though that getting signed is a big deal, are you aware of like I don't know, like a backlash of like, I don't want to wait. I want to get this out now. Like, is there
those things would be discussed prior to the editor really bringing it to acquisitions. So usually if an editor is interested in bringing something to acquisitions, they would reach out to the agent and they would have a phone call. Hopefully the agent is tempering expectations on the author's perspective as well. And honestly, if you've gotten an agent, probably you've done enough research into the industry to know how long it takes.
Okay.
A lot of people, when they're looking for agents, it takes them years.
And agents are, again, as you said, stretched as thin as the editors and publishers, and so that it's a lot. Like you might they may talk to you, but they may not have any movement for a while.
Exactly. When I left the big publisher that I was working at, I would say that there was a pileup of submissions that went back at least 6 months.
Yeah, and somebody, is it just is there a separate person who reads that, or is that also the
the acquisitions editors? So
who's also shepherding the books?
Correct. Acquisitions editors do a lot. I'm a little biased, right? Because that was the track that I wanted to go. But I think overall, the general consensus is acquisitions editor positions are the most sought after. They are the most competitive, and they are also the ones with the least work-life balance, because acquisitions editors need to touch every part of the process. Essentially, what they are doing is not only are they the developmental editors of the book, but they're also the person within the publishing house that is the primary contact with the author and the agent. So generally speaking, if marketing has something, if publicity has something, et cetera, the editor is usually in some way involved in those things as well. Editors get a large say in like cover design and things like that. So every cover meeting, the editors are there, as well as the designers and the marketers and the publicists, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of their job is communicating between the publishing house and the author. So that is their job in-house. They also need to edit the books alongside copy editing, alongside production editorial. They are doing passes of the books at that stage as well, even if they are not the primary editor in terms of copy editing. And then you need to find new books to acquire.
And there's got to be a lot of burnout, I would assume.
Is
that the number one burnout position in publishing? Like that sounds
Probably.
like, I mean, I look, I like to consider myself, now I'm thinking I'm less of a reader, but like, I like to think I'm an avid reader, and it's just like, I don't even think I could, I'm having trouble as you're describing it, attributing just one thing, like, oh, I have one book or I'm reading one book and then I have to edit this other, like it's a lot, but you know this now and you're speaking from a place where you've been around it. You said you were on a track to become that, but that's not where you start in the industry, obviously.
No, you start as an
Assistant to
at least one, usually two, sometimes three acquisitions editors.
okay.
If you were an editorial, obviously it depends on what, department you're trying to be a part of.
And did you like, I mean, I guess I'm just going to be as personal as possible. 3 months in, you've seen everything. Are you like, yes, I still want this?
Yeah, I mean, I interned for a long time prior to working like a full-time job in publishing. So yeah, I knew what I was signing up for when I got into it.
Okay. And and then, I mean, we'll skip to the end for a second. Then you founded your own publishing.
I did, yes.
And of everything, of the base knowledge we've just set up for everybody, like, are you able to go like, all right, well, we don't have to do things the way they've always been done. We're looking for a little more balance, or now you're not only an editor, you're a founder, and like now it's just even worse or
Honestly,
busier.
It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both because volume wise, I'm dealing with a lot less since we're new. But what I'm looking at is what are the ways that we can make this process more personal, make sure the author is fully involved, try to make it a little bit faster where you can, um, and really set the author up for success in terms of advocating for themselves, in terms of marketing themselves, because nowadays authors are absolutely expected in some ways to market themselves. It's not required and it will never really be required, but it's just kind of a proven fact at this point that the more an author markets themselves, the better the book is going to perform. And so obviously from a publisher perspective, you are going to kind of want to make sure that an author is willing and able to talk about themselves and market and whatever. But publishers don't usually give authors a ton of guidance in that regard. So
let me play devil's advocate for 1 second.
yeah,
You, as a publisher, decide to buy the Agent Palmer book. I have no idea what this book is, but you buy it.
right.
But I'm not, and you buy it because it's an amazing book. But I'm not really, I don't have a podcast and I'm not a big marketing person.
Right.
Obviously that then falls on you, but do you buy it because it's a good piece of work with the expectation that it won't quite sell because I'm not getting out there, or like, is there a balance based on like quality?
Okay, so my company works differently than a traditional publishing company does. So my company is much more akin to like indie publishing, like self-publishing.
Okay.
We kind of like to talk about it as we're bridging a gap kind of between self-publishing and traditional publishing in a lot of ways. From a traditional publisher standpoint, I would say if we do not think the book is going to sell well, we will and make back the investment, it would not be signed. So it would be based on a myriad of factors. It would be looking at the market. How does this book typically perform? Is it nonfiction or is it fiction? If it's nonfiction, having a platform of some kind is much more important than in fiction.
Okay.
Because in fiction, you can kind of, create buzz and hype around the story. But in nonfiction, if the story is the person, then the person needs to be interesting enough, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So for fiction, it is much more looking at what is selling right now. What is Barnes and Noble saying they want, on their shelves? What are they seeing sell a lot of? What is Amazon saying sells a lot of, what kind of has been proven already to be a money maker, and can we capitalize on that? Essentially, it's kind of the way you want to look at it.
But I don't know. It sounds really hard to capitalize on it when even if you were going as fast as possible, that book's not going to be on the shelf, for months, if not a year, right? Like, so that's a pretty big. Is it a gamble? Like, is that the wrong word?
It's a bit of a gamble. Okay. I'm not gonna lie. You can start to see some trends.
Okay.
And move in that kind of a way. So Barnes & Noble might come and say, hey, readers are looking for this kind of book. We've been seeing these books move a lot recently. And a publisher will say, oh, okay. Serendipitously, an agent has submitted to an editor this vampire book, and vampires are about to do really well. People seem more interested in vampires right now. Well, let's sign this book so that by the time it comes out in 2 years, hopefully the vampire craze is still there. So in some ways it is a gamble. In some ways it's forecasting. I genuinely feel that the data analysis portion of publishing could use a little bit of work. Just based on the experiences that I have had, I think so much of it is reliant on here and now data when we are publishing for things that are, years in the future.
Yeah, that was the reason that I kind of hesitated with gamble, because you are.
Yeah, it's not a gamble. It is some level of you look at the sales history and you look at what people have historically bought, et cetera, et cetera. But in some ways, there's no way to guarantee that in 2 years, people are not going to be sick of fairies.
Okay. Yeah. That's it. It's amazing to me that this sounds like the way it's always been. Which I don't know. I guess as a reader, that's good to know, because obviously, since let's say the millennium, and the rise of ebooks and self-publishing and any number of workarounds that don't involve a book going to a Barnes & Noble or an Amazon or a library, even to a certain extent. Like, it's kind of good that it's still the same, but also I just named all the things that you're also combating that 25 years ago you didn't have to worry about.
Absolutely. Once again, publishing is really slow. It's one of those things where the world is evolving very quickly, and publishing is just going to be kind of slow to catch up to that.
And should I be thankful that 15 years ago, when I had the flu, but I was reading through the original Terry Brooks Sword of Shannara trilogy, and I was legitimately too weak to hold this omnibus, that I was able to buy the Kindle version? Should I be thankful that was even an option then? Because obviously it sounds like they're a little slow, or is some of that not as slow?
Most of it is relatively slow.
Okay.
I will say, I do think that in places where it's relatively simple or easy to implement innovations, that is going to happen. Like, publishers have started utilizing AI in their workflows, which I personally hate.
Yeah, me too. I'll agree with you wholeheartedly there.
Yeah. Just I'm an incredibly anti-generative AI person.
Yeah, I'm all for analog as much as possible.
Please, yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, publishers have begun utilizing AI, or at least last I heard a year ago.
That doesn't surprise me, but it feels like you either need to lead with it or hide it and hope it never comes out. Maybe a little both somehow.
Yeah, I'm always an advocate for transparency as much as possible. I do wish that companies would disclose if they were going to utilize AI. And to be fair, a lot of employees within the companies themselves do not want to utilize AI. It's more that the company itself is trying to push everyone into using it for efficiency or whatever they feel,
whatever reason we can cobble together. Yeah, I get it. Well, exactly. Let's go back for a moment
Yeah.
Why'd you want to get into publishing in the first place?
I decided I wanted to become an editor when I was very young. I decided when I was like 13.
Okay, first a question.
Yeah.
Not author, editor.
Editor, yeah.
Okay, so you knew, like, all right, I don't have to write my own stories, but I want to help people tell theirs.
Yes. Yeah, that was absolutely. Okay. So I was and am, this might hurt my credibility here a little bit. I want to preface by saying I know. I was and am a big Twilight fan.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So I read Twilight when I was like 11, and I, after that, kind of entered the fan fiction space.
Okay.
And Twilight opened me up to a world of reading where I was a reader before, but I did not read very broadly, and I read much more broadly after Twilight. Twilight was the reason I picked up classic books. I read Romeo and Juliet and Wuthering Heights because of Twilight.
Okay.
And that it branched me out into a lot of other books. Here we are. So first of all, there's this love of reading that I have, and I am kind of an insufferable person. And so I would read these books and go, oh, I wish this had happened instead, or like, it would be so cool if something like this had happened, et cetera, et cetera. And I, at the same time, got into the fan fiction space where, again, I'd be reading these stories and I'm like, oh, if only this had happened, or like, oh, this person is like not using commas correctly. I'm 13 and I'm going, you're not using this comma correctly,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a combination of those things where I discovered what an editor does and kind of what that job is. And I went, oh, like, this is what I want to do, because I won't say I didn't dabble in my own writing. I did and do write some stuff on my own. I'm bad at it. I'm not, like, I know the rules and conventions and the general guidelines that I'm supposed to follow as an editor. These are the things that I advise authors on all the time. I cannot do them myself. I'm like, but this is the story. The story doesn't work with this framework. So I'm a person that I'm kind of,
hey,
just
look,
way.
That's massive self-awareness, though. I mean, that's pretty good.
So, I mean, if you were to read anything I wrote, it's poorly paced. It's not, the dialogue's kind of weird. Like, I'm not a very good writer. However, editorially, I felt and feel that I am able to kind of make some insights and connections between different parts of the story where I think, hopefully after I work on books, they are stronger than before I worked on them.
You just can't take your own advice, which is
fine. No, that's very, very, yeah.
No, I mean, no arguments. I edit, produce other podcasts, and I have a hard time making adjustments to this show that, like, I demand of others before they even start, right? And so I get it. It's hard. So let's fast forward. Why start your own company? Obviously, I agree with you that as someone who was only, and this was, God, 15 years ago, I was in the space of trying to help my friend submit, but there is a massive gap between self-publish and a publishing house.
Yeah.
No matter how big or small, that's I think people don't understand just how big it's almost a binary state. It's a yes or a no.
Yeah. So to explain, let me start with why I left and then kind of go into my company a little bit.
Yeah.
So I left because it just working in the environment I was in was no longer working for me, and that was health-wise, that was mentally, and it was morally. So from the moment I started interning, when I was in college, I started interning as a freshman in college. I was struck by the fact that we were really not supposed to give a lot of feedback to authors. The mentality is, so agents only make money when their clients make money. So the
Okay.
kind of the mentality is, if you give feedback to every author that reaches out to you, then you will only do work for free and you will never actually do your real job, the part that makes money. However, I would read these not even whole books, portions of books at my internships and go, I have a suggestion to help this person. I would love to be able to give it to them. However, I couldn't. And it was insight that people really don't have. It's insight like, this market is not right. Back in 2017, no one was touching a vampire book because everyone was so done with vampires after the Twilight craze and the Vampire Diaries and True Blood and everything. They were like, no more vampires. We are not touching that. No one wants it. And then people would come in with these vampire books and you would just send a form rejection. When instead, I wish I could have said, vampire books are really not doing well right now. I would recommend that you shelve this project and potentially come back to it later, because publishing is cyclical. So even if right now vampires are dead,
It'll come back.
They're back now.
Also, I understand I can already hear the frustration, because if you give them feedback to make the book better, it will be a better book and it will sell more. And thus, I guess, I'm with you. I don't see the problem. I mean, obviously you can't give feedback to everybody, or all you're doing is feedback, but if you have time, or you can shoot off a quick email.
Obviously you can shoot off a couple quick emails and that's fine, but it's a question of where do you draw the line?
Okay.
And how many people can you help in this way? Because, and I'm going to be, I don't know how to phrase this in a way that's not going to potentially hurt some feelings. So I'm going to try to tread lightly here. Not every person, unfortunately, is an incredible writer. Not every person has a great command over grammar. Not everyone has a good sense of what dialogue sounds like to a reader versus in their own heads. And so those are things that are significantly harder to give feedback on, because, what can you say realistically?
Yeah, I guess you're talking. I guess you may be talking to the wrong person for this, because I'm. People have come to me and they're like, I think I want to do a podcast. I'm like, I don't think you want to do that. And I know I could make money. I know if I said, yes, of course, sure. And then they're going to be like, well, how much? I know I could make money, but there's a part of me that's like, not everybody, I think not everybody with a microphone and the ability to record should have a podcast. I don't think that. And by the same token, I find it hard to believe that everybody has a story to tell. It's not always worth sharing. And I am,
in the same vein, I'm not entirely familiar with how the podcasting world works, but there are podcasts like networks, right?
Yep.
So in some ways you can compare it in this way. If you as a person want to make a podcast, you could go to a podcast network and try to get your podcast picked up by a network.
Yep.
Or you can go and post it on Spotify.
And be yourself.
And posting on Spotify is not illegitimate, because some podcasts, when you are doing it that way, very, very good. High production value. The person really knows what they're doing and they've invested in the equipment and all of this stuff. But some people are sitting in their bedroom on their laptop with no microphone and recording something, which is also, valid in some ways, but perhaps doesn't have the production value. Or perhaps they're not a very eloquent speaker and there's no one there to tell them that, or they're not good at editing and there's no one there to tell them that. So in a similar way, that is kind of what authors are dealing with, where if they go to a publisher, or realistically an agent, if they go to an agent, they may or may not get picked up and they may or may not get told why. And so an author is left with the decision of, do I, do I table this and do I give up, or do I try to go it my own?
Yeah.
Which is a completely different ball game. I would argue that self-publishing is in many ways more difficult than traditionally publishing, because yes, you're doing it faster, and yes, you can do all of it and make sure that it actually gets out into the world, but you're doing all of the work
By yourself. Yeah.
by yourself. So
Yeah.
it is a huge monetary investment if you want to, really do things right and make sure you're putting your best foot forward with the book. And it's a huge time investment. You got to learn a lot of stuff if you want to do it by yourself. So my company, what we kind of do is we're a team of professionals where an author comes to us. They say, I want to publish this book. And in general, to publish, it costs you nothing. You should not pay anything to publish a book. If someone says they're a traditional publisher and they ask you for money, absolutely not. Run away. We are not a traditional publisher. We are an author subsidized publisher. So authors who would otherwise self-publish, for example, can come to us and we offer services. So we offer editorial, we offer marketing, we offer cover design, we offer formatting, et cetera, et cetera. And we publish books under our house. We also work on books freelance, so it's not necessary for us to publish the books, but we publish the books under our house. And along with that comes a lot of the benefits of working with a publisher. So you'll have somebody to pitch you for events, you have someone to pitch you to bookstores, make sure that timeline-wise, you are putting your best foot forward, because there are a lot of authors who write a book, they say, I'm going to self-publish it, they post it on Amazon a week or two after they finish it, and they're like, okay, now I need to market this thing because it's up. In reality, you probably needed to start marketing that like 6 months ago.
Beforehand. Yeah.
Exactly.
I get that's the only part of all of this process that I've become friendly enough with authors that I am aware of the advanced reader copy. In fact, I have a few ARCs in my library because and I think that, and maybe it's just because I usually only get them from authors who I have a relationship with, but I read it and I review it, and I always try and make sure that my review comes out a week before or a week after release time, whenever that is. And that's my part of the, I guess, social contract of like, you got a free book. I did, but I'm doing, and you're getting a review, but that means that there's a copy out there, especially when I get a physical one that exists, almost ready to go. That has been mailed, and is here. And then I have time to read it. It's not like, oh, this comes out tomorrow, read it now. It's like, no, I get some time.
Exactly. And I mean, like podcasts and, as I'm sure you know, and magazines and review outlets and things like that, they book months in advance, a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's not possible usually to say, hey, I just put out a book yesterday, would you like to feature it in a news in an article, because that article needed to be pitched months in advance.
Yeah.
Probably alongside other things, because most of the time just one book is not very appealing. And then same with bookstores, where if you're trying to work with bookstores, if you want to do an event, for example, it's going to be kind of tricky to get an event if it's not like release week or release month at the very least. You go a little bit too far outside of that window, and suddenly it's like, no, I'm like, no one's going to care about this book because it came out 3 months ago. So unless it's selling like hotcakes already, a bookstore doesn't want to work with you. And so that's a lot of the stuff that we are able to kind of help self-publishing authors course correct on. And so essentially what Contrarian Publishing is authors really paying for a team of professionals who can help them publish their book. the difference between us and a standard publisher is that at a regular publisher, publishers keep 90% of the royalties. So an author usually only makes like 10% of a book around. It's fluctuates between 7 and 12 at most places. With us, because an author is paying us money up front, they get 100% of the royalties unless and until they make the money back that they invested. We do not guarantee that an author is going to make their money back. It is honestly not likely most of the time that they're going to make their money back, and we make that really, really clear. But you're paying for a service, and so you get the money, and then if you make your money back, then we start earning a small royalty on it. There are some caveats. There are some instances in which we do make royalties, but generally speaking.
So I'm going to read through the lines for a bit.
Yeah.
You left a big publishing house.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the word burnout. It sounds like.
It was partially burnout. Yeah, okay. I guess I would say it was burnout.
So while I admire and I love what you're doing with Contrarian Publishing now, you were burnt out from a publisher. Did you take a break before jumping back into publishing, or were you like, I want to do
a little bit of a break?
Okay.
But honestly, the situation that really led to the burnout is something that I can't super talk about.
No, it's fine. It's just I just imagine like you were like I'm burnt out from publishing, but I think I want to do publishing light. Although you're not really doing that because you added more to your plate. So it's not really publishing light, but I guess because it's not like it's your own, it's not quite as like there's more at stake almost.
What I will say is it's all about who you're working with.
Okay. No, that's pretty important though. I mean, that's, and it also means that you get to set the traditions and the expectations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people that I work with are awesome and very, very collaborative and just a fun time to work with. I think in general, we're in a creative field, so I don't think that we should be really cutthroat about anything, because at the end of the day, it's not that serious. We're making books, and books are absolutely serious. I'm not saying they're not, but we're not dealing with, we're not doctors, we're not dealing with lives. It's books. If something is a day or two late, it's not the end of the world. If life happens and something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. If we were planning for a release of a certain type of book and oh no, another of that type of book has come out, there's room for more. People have room on their plates for more than just one thing.
Yeah.
What were those movies that came out? Olympus Has Fallen and the other one.
There's those, but we also had Armageddon and Deep Impact were the same summer, exactly. Right? Yeah, it happens. It
happens. And that's not a tragedy. That's just I guess that's what we were all feeling like creating at this time.
It's not that serious. We're making books. This simple statement took me back to my first days in a professional office, where my boss said that we were in tourism and hospitality, not a hospital. Things can wait. You can go home at the end of the day. Now, sure, in any setting, there will be specifics where things are inflexible, but on a day-to-day standard, making books and promoting tourism aren't that serious, even though most of us who do it or did it take it seriously. To that same extent, I take this podcast seriously. I take my blog seriously. But if something comes up, something comes up. Aside from that, Jamie has satiated my curiosity on the publishing industry enough that sure, I'm still curious about it, but it's not shrouded in as much mystery as I once thought. Those people in traditional publishing houses and even more independent outfits like Jamie's Contrarian Publishing are just very busy. And should they decide to spend any amount of time on work-life balance, they won't be any more accessible. Still, the concept of Contrarian Publishing gives me hope for a sort of renaissance of publishing and perhaps other industries in need of bridging the massive gaps between traditional and indie. And if you see one of those gaps, maybe you could start something to help bridge that gap. It's something to think about. In the meantime, I hope you've learned more and gained a greater appreciation for just how those books that populate your shelves came to be. Thanks for listening to the Palmer Files episode 167. And now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can find all related ways to contact Jamie or myself in the show notes. You can see all of Jamie's stuff at jamieisreading.com. That's JAMIE isreading.com. Learn more about Contrarian Publishing at contrarianpublishing.com. The music for this episode was provided by Henno Heitur. Email and comments can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. All right, Jamie, do you have one final question for me?
Yeah. Would you ever publish a book? And if you were to publish a book, knowing what you know about the publishing industry, would you pursue traditional publishing or self-publishing for it?
So I've not been asked this specific. I was asked once if I was able to publish a book, what would it be? Which I guess was a way of asking me what I'd write about in a way that made it sure that I didn't have to worry about if I was publishing or how.
Right.
And I hemmed and hawed about that. And that was about, 2 years ago or something like that. And I don't remember what my answer was at that time.
Uh-huh.
Now I will say it's gotta be nonfiction. I'm so far removed from short stories and poetry and just fiction of any kind that if I was going to write anything, it would probably be nonfiction. I'm not entirely sure what it would be, although I do like the idea of maybe look, my mother has published 2 books about internal marketing, and my father and I always give her crap because she never finished her trilogy. Not that she set out to start one, but she wrote a second one, and we've been giving her saying, when's the third one coming for forever now. I think given how much I have either inadvertently or on purpose spoken about internal marketing on this podcast and with people I talk to on a regular basis, I might want to try and finish her trilogy. But there's also a part of me that I guess what's more likely would be that I wrote that I would write a book that was one of those memoir-ish self-help books. And I've read a few that are really good. So I'm not going to say like, oh, it's whatever, but it would have to be memoir-ish because I like the idea that like, all right, like as an example, you should go for a walk every day. But then I spend 15, 20 pages explaining to you how I came to that realization and what that means for me now and what the benefits are or whatever. That's an example. I don't know what it would be because I have, I like ranting, and I feel like that's a constructive way to get like to distill down into like these are things and how did I get here and what does it mean?
So kind of a mixture of self-help and like essays. Yeah.
I think that would probably be the book. And look, I don't know what those topics would be. I don't know what my bullet points would be or my sales pitch would be. These are the 10 things I'm going to teach somebody. But I think that would be it. And I would say I'd go with you. I'd go with the middle option. Like, I don't like the idea of doing it by myself. I do this podcast by myself. I do the blog by myself, and I assisted in making a documentary, and that was not necessarily what you're talking about with your middle ground, but it was collaboration.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I was going to do something on that scale, I couldn't do it by myself. I would have to have a level of collaboration that would exist. But I also know, like, out the gate, I don't have the energy to go pitch and get an agent and try and sell it. So having a solid idea to come to you would be a good start. But even if it wasn't you, I would like some kind of middle option.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like I talked about in the episode, like that's where I think what you're doing is magnificent, because there needs to be something in between. I don't know. I know that, and I, maybe the collaboration is like the key to everything, because I know from authors that did pitch and, collected their rejection letters, or they're not rejection, they're just got ghosted.
Yeah.
That there's a level of failure that makes them go, all right, maybe I'll self-publish. That self-publishing being an afterthought means that they've, no offense to most of them, they've failed before it hits the Amazon store, because they're looking at self-publishing as a lesser than. Yeah, which is, it's not. It'll still end up on someone's shelf, in someone's e-reader, regardless. But I think almost there needs to be, well, you can only handle so much. So there needs to be more of you. There needs to be more in-between options, because it feels like a good place to be. And from where I'm sitting, if I was going to do it, I would almost immediately go in the middle. I wouldn't even bother pitching myself to something bigger. Maybe as a second book, where I could go, here's my first book, here are my sales, here's my pitch for book 2. But for a first one, for the first one out, oh, absolutely not. I don't want to self-publish, because I need somebody to hold me accountable. Because I also look at it like, if I were going to do it, I wouldn't want to give up my weekly blog, and I wouldn't want to give up my twice monthly podcast. So if no one else is going to hold me accountable, but I got to edit that episode today. And but I have a blog post for 2 weeks from now. If I'm not paying you to keep me accountable, I can kick my own can down the road and not do anything.
Exactly. And that's a large part of it. And I will say there are those middle options available. Like, we're not the first kind of company to do this. However, a lot of companies that are kind of the middle ground are scams. And so that's the other thing that I work really, really hard to try to educate people about. It's the reason that I was kind of like, traditional publishing is this way and don't fall for anything, because so many people are trying to take advantage of authors who just want to publish their books.
Yeah. And it's a horrible scam, because you're feeding on somebody's own creativity, and it's just it's
usually people who don't know any better. It's people who, they think that they're publishing it with a legitimate company, but it's a company that probably won't give you very much editorial help, that will kind of just slap a random cover on it, throw it up on Amazon, and then hope it sells something, and won't throw any marketing power behind it, won't do anything like that. And that's not what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, no, I like the middle option, mainly because I think if I got to that point, the idea of selling myself all over again. Look, I'm doing what I do for a living because I'm a stay-at-home dad, and it's something I can still do. Mm-hmm. When the child goes to school and I get to figure out what's next, I'm already still dreading selling myself again, and I don't like selling myself. And no matter how much faith I put into my book, that's still selling as you described very well. You're selling your book, but you're really selling yourself.
Yeah.
And so I'm not good at that to get me a job to pay the bills. I'm not going to be any better to get me a publisher to publish my book.
Exactly. And it's the same way in terms of, if you are to self-publish, if you're not marketing yourself constantly, basically, you're not going to see sales. And the reality is that a lot of authors just want to be authors, but they're stuck kind of having to sit and film a bunch of TikToks because they want to market their books.
So do you after all this time in the industry,
Yeah.
do you have any more inkling to write your own thing? Or are you still very much like, no, I know how this is made. I'm good where I'm at.
I mean, I have a few things. I would not say they're anywhere near close to, me even thinking about publishing them. But um I've written actually a lot of books. I think I've written like 7 different books. None of them none of those will ever really see the light of day. I'm working on one right now that's a rom-com.
Okay.
Where the plan is, I don't know if this is gonna how it's gonna execute. So, one day this might be wildly incorrect. But the plan right now is that it's a romance that goes back and forth between when these two people were in high school and where they're adults.
Okay.
And it's a second chance romance type of a thing.
Very nice. I've a while ago, no, it's not a while ago. 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I met my now wife, and then a year I asked her to move in with me, and she said yes, and she was moving across the country, and she wasn't going to be moving in for a year, and I panicked because I had a house and I didn't have any room for another person because obviously we all just collect stuff, and I started getting rid of things. And then I got rid of things, and I made room. Great. And then I kept downsizing because I was like, it's nice having space. This is great. And I skipped the book part. And so, I don't know if this will air before or after, probably before, but I was working on a blog post about how I determined how I was going to purge my books of sorts, and that's going to turn into a solo podcast episode because it became a very long blog. It will be in both places, probably well after this, because I still, as we record this, which is months before it releases, I don't have a conclusion yet, even though I wrote everything up to that. But what I decided was I was going to read every book in my house.
Oh my gosh. That's a journey.
It does mean I've saved a lot of money by not buying books.
Yeah.
But I only bring it up because I've read, look, if you're a reader, you say yes to books a lot.
Yeah.
Whether you want it or not, whether it's something that it's a book, it's free, or yes, of course. And so I've not given up on anything. I've read at least 3 books. I've read some stuff I wouldn't normally read. I've kind of surprised myself with some of that stuff.
Very good.
Some things are harder. Some things are easier. The harder books that aren't like, I hate this with a passion, but I'm still going to read it. But the hard books have been, more fulfilling to finish. But it also goes like, there were some books I picked up going like, I'm probably going to donate this when I'm done. And I'm like, no, I got to keep this. And there have been others where I'm like, I'll probably keep this. And like, nope, that goes in the donate pile. And so I'm slowly getting to a point where I have room on my shelf to start buying books again.
Nice.
And I'm just, all that as a preface to say, if you do publish, I have room on my shelf for your book.
Thank you. I appreciate it.